Hey, welcome back to Cheating Tales Lab. We've got a brand new story lined up for you today, and we're thrilled to have you here. We hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Alfred Farrell stood at the kitchen sink, his weathered 40-year-old hands methodically washing dishes. 15 years as a postal worker had given him an appreciation for routine, but lately, something felt off. His wife Hope's sudden obsession with her appearance hadn't gone unnoticed. New clothes, a different hairstyle, hours spent primping in front of the mirror. At first, Alfred had been flattered, thinking perhaps she was making an effort for him. But as the weeks wore on, a gnawing suspicion took root in his gut. The sound of Hope's muffled giggles drifted from the living room, grating on his nerves like sandpaper. He dried his hands and padded quietly towards the source of the sound. Hope was sprawled on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, a secretive smile playing on her lips. As he entered, she startled, sitting up abruptly. "Oh, I've got to go," she said hurriedly into the phone. "Talk to you later, Beth." Alfred raised an eyebrow. "Beth from your book club?" Hope nodded, a touch too enthusiastically. "Yes, we were just discussing our latest read. You know how we get carried away." He did know. He also knew that Hope's book club met on Tuesdays, and it was Curly Thursday. But he said nothing, merely grunting in acknowledgement before retreating to the laundry room. As he sorted through the clothes, his hand brushed against Hope's purse. A slip of paper fell out, a receipt. Alfred's eyes widened as he read the itemized list. La Perla, $300 for a scrap of lace he'd never seen. The gnawing in his gut intensified. That night, after Hope had fallen asleep, Alfred lay awake, his mind racing. He thought about the 15 years they'd been married, the routines they'd settled into, the comfortable silences that had once felt like home but now seemed to stretch between them like a chasm. He made a decision. The next day, while Hope was at work, Alfred installed a discreet GPS tracker on her car. It was a simple device, easily hidden beneath the passenger seat. As he activated it, a wave of guilt washed over him. This wasn't who he was. He'd been a Boy Scout for Christ's sake. Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Over the next week, Alfred watched as the little blinking that represented Hope's car made frequent trips to the Sunset Motel across town. Each time, his heart sank a little lower. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He called in sick to work, something he hadn't done in years. His supervisor, Dave, seemed concerned. "You all right, Farrell? You never take time off." "Just a bug," Alfred lied smoothly. "I'll be back tomorrow." Good as new. As soon as Hope left for work, Alfred followed at a discreet distance. His palms were sweaty on the steering wheel as he watched her pull into the Sunset Motel parking lot. He parked across the street, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. And then he saw him, Justin Hendricks, the popular local radio DJ and Hope's co-worker. Alfred had met him once at a company picnic. Charming, funny, with a voice like melted chocolate. Everything Alfred wasn't. He watched, feeling like he was having an out-of-body experience, as Hope practically ran into Justin's arms. Their lips met in a passionate kiss that made Alfred's stomach turn. With shaking hands, he raised his phone and snapped a few photos. Evidence. That's what he needed now. As he lowered the phone, his eyes met Justin's across the parking lot. For a split second, recognition flashed in the other man's eyes. Then Hope pulled him into the motel room, and the door slammed shut. Alfred sat in his car for a long time after that, staring at nothing. He felt hollow-gutted. But beneath the pain, something else was stirring. A cold, calculating anger that surprised him with its intensity. His mind was already formulating a plan. Over the next few weeks, Alfred maintained a convincing facade of normalcy at home. He smiled at Hope over breakfast, asked about her day, and even surprised her with flowers one evening. All the while, he was meticulously gathering evidence. His first stop was the Sunset Motel. Sam, the owner, was a chatty man in his 60s who seemed flattered by Alfred's attention. Alfred spun a tale about writing a novel about small-town life, and Sam was more than happy to regale him with stories about the motel's colorful history. "You must see all sorts here," Alfred said casually one afternoon, leaning against the front desk. Sam chuckled. "Oh, you wouldn't believe the half of it. Affairs, mostly. People thinking they're being so clever, but it's always the same story." Alfred's hand tightened on the edge of the desk. "I bet you have some security measures in place, though. For insurance purposes, if nothing else." Sam nodded towards a camera in the corner of the lobby. "Just the one there. Records everything that happens in this lobby." Alfred's eyes gleamed. "Fascinating. Mind if I take a look at how it's set up? For the book, you know." Sam hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. "Why not? Come on back." In the small office behind the front desk, Sam showed Alfred the ancient computer that served as a motel security system. It didn't take much for Alfred to convince Sam to let him study it for his novel. Once alone, Alfred's fingers flew over the keyboard. He may have been a postal worker, but he'd picked up some IT skills during his stint in the military. Within minutes, he had access to months of security footage. He found what he was looking for almost immediately: Hope and Justin entering and leaving the motel at regular intervals. Sometimes they looked furtive, glancing around nervously. Other times they were so wrapped up in each other they might as well have been alone in the world. Alfred copied the relevant footage onto a flash drive, his face impassive. When Sam returned, Alfred was leaning back in the chair, a pleasant smile on his face. "Find what you needed?" Sam asked. Alfred nodded. "Oh, yes. Very enlightening. Thank you, Sam." Back at home, Alfred turned his attention to Hope's email. She'd always been careless with her passwords, using the same one for everything: their anniversary date. The irony wasn't lost on Alfred, as he easily gained access to her account. What he found made his blood run cold. Months of intimate exchanges between Hope and Justin, plans for their rendezvous, declarations of passion, and worst of all, lies about working overtime at the radio station to meet Justin. Alfred read every single email, saving copies to an external hard drive. By the time he was done, it was well past midnight. He heard Hope stirring upstairs and quickly shut down the computer. As he climbed into bed beside her, Hope mumbled sleepily, "Everything okay? You were up late." Alfred forced a smile. "Just catching up on some work." "Go back to sleep, honey." Hope snuggled closer to him, and Alfred lay rigid, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the vows they'd made, the life they'd built together, all of it based on a foundation of lies. In that moment, something inside Alfred hardened. The pain was still there, a dull ache in his chest, but it was overshadowed by a cold, calculating anger. He reached for the bedside table, pulling out a small notebook. In the dim light of the alarm clock, he began to write. Every detail of Hope's betrayal, every piece of evidence he'd gathered, it would become his journal, a record of his emotional journey. And though he didn't know it yet, it would become crucial to his plan. The next morning, Alfred called his supervisor at the post office. "Dave, it's Alfred. I need to take a week off. Family emergency out of state." Dave sounded concerned. "Everything all right, Farrell? This isn't like you." Alfred forced a note of worry into his voice. "My sister's in the hospital. Nothing too serious. But I need to be there. You understand, right?" Of course. Take all the time you need." With that taken care of, Alfred set his plan in motion. His first stop was a small, cash-only apartment across town. The landlord didn't ask questions when Alfred handed over 3 months' rent in cash, using the name Nick Buford. Next, he visited a graphic designer in the next town over. The young woman looked skeptical when Alfred explained what he wanted: a life-size promotional poster for a surprise anniversary party. Alfred nodded, his face a mask of enthusiasm. "My wife's always wanted to be a movie star. I thought it would be fun to make her the star of her own movie poster." He handed over the photos he'd taken of Hope and Justin outside the motel. The designer's eyebrows rose, but she took the job, agreeing to create a life-size design. Back in town, Alfred made a stop at the home of Marissa, a mutual friend of his and Hope's. She was delighted to see him. Alfred, what a nice surprise. Komein, komein. Over coffee, Alfred spun a tale about planning surprise parties for both Hope and Justin. I was hoping you might have spare keys to their houses, he said casually. You know, for decorating and such. Marissa hesitated for a moment, then smiled. Oh, why not? It's for a good cause, after all. As he left Marissa's house, keys to both Hope and Justin's homes in hand, Alfred felt a twinge of guilt. He'd never been a good liar before, but he was learning fast. That evening, as Hope chatted about her day over dinner, Alfred nodded and smiled in all the right places. But his mind was elsewhere, running through the logistics of his plan. He had learned that morning that there were budget cuts coming at work. His job might be on the line. It added a sense of urgency to his actions. After dinner, while Hope was engrossed in her favorite TV show, Alfred slipped down to the basement. He powered up his computer and began researching divorce laws. Property division, alimony, grounds for divorce. He took meticulous notes. Then he turned his attention to his personal assets, investments, savings accounts, their joint checking account. He began the process of liquidating what he could, moving money around in a complex shell game. As he worked, Alfred felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. For the first time in weeks, he felt in control. Hope might have betrayed him, but he would have the last laugh. He glanced at the clock. It was well past midnight. He could hear Hope moving around upstairs, probably wondering where he was. For a moment, he considered going up, playing the role of devoted husband one more time. Instead, he turned back to his computer. He had work to do, preparing for all contingencies. The night air was thick with anticipation as Alfred Farrell crouched in the shadows outside the WKRP radio station. His heart hammered against his ribs, a steady rhythm that matched the ticking of his watch. 11:45 p.m. 15 minutes until the cleaning crew's shift change. 15 minutes until he set his plan in motion. He adjusted the backpack slung over his shoulder, feeling the weight of the rolled-up poster inside. The life-size image of Hope and Justin, caught in a passionate embrace outside the Sunset Motel, felt like a bomb waiting to detonate. And Alfred was about to light the fuse. As the last of the cleaning staff trickled out of the building, Alfred made his move. He slipped inside, his footsteps echoing in the empty lobby. The security guard was doing his rounds on the upper floors. Alfred had memorized the schedule over the past week. He had exactly 7 minutes before the guard returned. With practiced efficiency, Alfred unrolled the poster and began hanging it in the center of the main lobby. His hand shook slightly as he smoothed out the creases, revealing the damning image inch by inch. Hope's face, frozen in ecstasy. Justin's hands, possessive and hungry. It was obscene. It was perfect. Stepping back, Alfred surveyed his handiwork. The poster dominated the space, impossible to miss. But something was missing. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a can of red spray paint. In bold, dripping letters, he wrote beneath the image, "We know what you did." The words seemed to pulse in the dim light, accusing and final. Alfred allowed himself a grim smile. Let them try to explain this away. With 2 minutes to spare, he retreated to a hidden alcove and pulled out his laptop. His fingers flew over the keys as he hacked into the station's email server. One by one, messages pinged out to every employee, from the lowliest intern to the station manager himself. The subject line read, "New art installation in the lobby, don't miss it." As he heard the elevator ding, signaling the guard's return, Alfred slipped out a side exit. The cool night air hit his face, and he took a deep breath. Phase 1 complete. He drove to the hotel he'd booked near his fictional sister's house, his alibi secured. As he checked in, he made a show of looking haggard and worried, playing the part of the concerned brother to perfection. "Room service, please," he told the sympathetic desk clerk. "I've been on the road all day visiting my sick sister. I am exhausted." Once in his room, Alfred set up his laptop and connected to the station's security cameras. He'd planted a back door in their system weeks ago, and now it gave him a front-row seat to the chaos that was about to unfold. He settled back against the headboard, a glass of whiskey in hand. On the screen, the night guard was making his final rounds. Any minute now, he would turn the corner and come face to face with Alfred's handiwork. Alfred raised his glass in a silent toast. "Showtime," he murmured. Hope Farrell hummed to herself as she applied her lipstick, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to break over her head. She'd woken up to an empty bed, Alfred having left early for work, or so she thought. Her phone buzzed with a text from Justin. "Can't wait to see you at the charity event tonight. You're going to knock them dead in that new dress." Hope smiled, a mixture of excitement and guilt twisting in her stomach. She pushed the guilt aside, as she had been doing for months now. Alfred would never know. He was too trusting, too caught up in his own routine to notice what was happening right under his nose. As she left the house, Hope never noticed the figure watching from across the street. Alfred waited until her car had turned the corner before making his move. He entered the house, their house, with the spare key he'd never returned. For a moment, he stood in the entryway, memories washing over him. Their first night here, carrying Hope over the threshold. Christmases, birthdays, lazy Sunday mornings, all tainted now. Alfred shook off the nostalgia and got to work. He moved through the rooms like a whirlwind, methodically creating chaos. He overturned drawers, scattered papers, smashed picture frames. But it wasn't random destruction. No! Every move was calculated. He focused on Hope's belongings and their shared spaces, leaving his own things largely untouched. A message hidden in the mayhem. This was about her, not him. As he worked, Alfred planted tiny cameras throughout the house. In the bedroom, the kitchen, the living room. Each one carefully hidden, ready to capture Hope's reaction when she returned home. In the study, Alfred paused. He pulled out a sheet of paper and began to write. The words flowed easily, all the pain and betrayal of the past months pouring onto the page. When he was done, he read it over. "Hope, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I know about Justin. I know about the Sunset Motel. I know about the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. Every moment, every touch, every whispered promise. I know it all. Did you think I was too stupid to notice? Too blind to see what was happening right in front of me? I may be just a simple postal worker, but I'm not a fool. I've taken what's mine. Don't bother looking for me. Don't bother trying to explain. There's nothing left to say. Goodbye. Hope. I hope it was worth it. Alfred." He folded the letter and placed it on Hope's pillow, a landmine waiting to be triggered. Before leaving, Alfred gathered up the important documents he'd need: birth certificate, social security card, bank statements. He also took a few sentimental items. His grandfather's watch, the baseball signed by his childhood hero, the photo album from their honeymoon. Let Hope wonder why these specific things were missing. As a final touch, Alfred picked up the phone and dialed 911. When the operator answered, he disguised his voice, pitching it higher and adding a tremor of fear. "Please, you have to help. I just saw someone breaking into the house across the street, 1242 Maple Drive. They're still inside." He hung up before the operator could ask any questions. The police would arrive soon, adding another layer of chaos to Hope's homecoming. Alfred took one last look around the house that had been his home for 15 years. Then he walked out the door, leaving behind the wreckage of his old life. Alfred sat in the sterile environment of his local bank, his face a mask of calm as he systematically dismantled his financial life. The teller, a young woman with concerned eyes, watched as he closed account after account. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Farrell?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. "That's a significant amount of money to transfer offshore." Alfred nodded, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Quite sure," Thank you. I'm making some lifestyle changes." As the last of his and Hope's joint accounts was drained, Alfred felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He'd spent weeks researching offshore banking, setting up a labyrinth of transfers that would be nearly impossible to trace. Hope wouldn't see a penny of it. Next stop, the credit card companies. One by one, Alfred canceled every card they shared. He could almost hear the distant sound of Hope's wallet becoming worthless. Sitting in his car outside the bank, Alfred pulled out his phone. He stared at the screen for a long moment before composing an email to his boss at the post office. "Dear Dave, I regret to inform you that I must resign from my position, effective immediately. Personal circumstances have arisen that require my full attention. I apologize for the short notice and any inconvenience this may cause. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Alfred Heureux." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. 15 years of service ended with a few taps on a screen, but it was necessary. He couldn't risk anyone at work connecting him to what was about to unfold at the radio station. Alfred's next task was perhaps the cruelest, but he felt no remorse as he sealed the envelope. Inside was a comprehensive dossier of Hope and Justin's affair. Hotel receipts, email printouts, photos from the motel. On the front, in clear block letters, he'd written, "Mrs. Faith Hendricks." He dropped the package in a mailbox across town, imagining the bomb it would detonate in Justin's home. Let him feel the sting of betrayal, too. As the sun began to set, Alfred drove to the long-term parking lot at the airport. He pulled into a spot near the back, away from the security cameras. From his trunk, he retrieved a suitcase he'd packed for this very purpose. He placed the suitcase on the passenger seat, making sure it was clearly visible. On top, he left a printed itinerary for a one-way flight to Bangkok, departing in 2 days. Let them chase shadows halfway around the world. His final stop was the small apartment he'd rented under the name Nick Buford. It was sparsely furnished, but it had everything he needed: a bed, a desk, and most importantly, a top-of-the-line computer setup. Alfred settled into the chair, powering up the multiple monitors. On one screen, he pulled up the feed from the hidden cameras in his and Hope's house. Another showed the security footage from the radio station. A third displayed local news sites, ready to catch any breaking stories. He leaned back, a tumbler of whiskey in hand. The pieces were all in place. Now, he just had to watch it all burn. As night fell, Alfred Farrell disappeared. And Nick Buford, a man with no past and an uncertain future, began his vigil. Hope Farrell's heels clicked against the polished floor of the WKRP radio station lobby, the sound echoing in the early morning quiet. She was running late for the charity event planning meeting, her mind still fuzzy from a night of stolen moments with Justin. As she rounded the corner, her steps faltered, then stopped completely. There, dominating the lobby wall, was a life-size poster of her and Justin locked in a passionate embrace outside the Sunset Motel. Hope's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Beneath the damning image, blood-red letters screamed, "We know what you did." "Oh my God," she whispered, her perfectly manicured hand flying to her mouth. Around her, the lobby began to fill with arriving employees. Gasps and whispers erupted as each person caught sight of the poster. Hope stood frozen, feeling dozens of eyes boring into her. "Hope, what's going on? Why is everyone—" Justin's voice cut off abruptly as he entered the lobby. His face, usually so confident and charming, drained of all color. Their eyes met across the room, panic and shame mirrored in each other's gaze. In that moment, Hope knew their carefully constructed house of lies was crumbling around them. "Farrell, Hendricks, my office now." The station manager's voice boomed through the lobby, cutting through the growing murmurs. Hope and Justin followed him in silence, feeling like condemned prisoners walking to the gallows. As the office door closed behind them, shutting out the chaos of the lobby, Hope felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. "Would either of you care to explain what the hell is going on out there?" The manager's face was purple with rage, a vein throbbing in his forehead. Hope opened her mouth, but no words came out. What could she possibly say? Justin, ever the smooth talker, tried to salvage the situation. Sir, I can assure you, this is all just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? The manager slammed his fist on the desk. There's a billboard-sized photo of you two going at it like rabbits in my lobby. Do you have any idea what this could do to the station? To our reputation? Hope sank into a chair, her legs no longer able to support her. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a nightmare. You're both suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation, the manager continued. Now get out of my sight before I do something I'll regret. As they left the office, Hope's phone buzzed with a text from Alfred. Hope, something's happened at the house. You need to come home now. Hope's heart, already racing, kicked into overdrive. What else could possibly go wrong? She raced home, her mind a whirl of panic and confusion. As she pulled into the driveway, she saw police cars parked outside. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her keys. The moment she stepped inside, Hope's world tilted on its axis. The house was in shambles, drawers upended, pictures smashed. It looked like a tornado had torn through their once peaceful home. Mrs. Farrell? A police officer approached her. We received a call about a break-in at this address. Can you tell us if anything's missing? Hope stumbled through the house in a daze, barely registering the officer's words. When she reached the bedroom, she saw it, a letter, placed neatly on her pillow amidst the chaos. With trembling hands, she unfolded the paper and began to read. Alfred's words, cold and cutting, laid bare every secret, every lie. He knew. He had always known. Hope's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor, the letter clutched to her chest. As the reality of what she'd lost crashed over her, Hope began to sob, great heaving cries that shook her entire body. The police officers exchanged uncomfortable glances, their suspicions growing with each passing moment. Across town, Faith Hendricks stared at the package that had just arrived, its contents spread across her kitchen table. Photos, emails, hotel receipts, irrefutable evidence of her husband's infidelity. With a calm she didn't feel, Faith walked to the front door and changed the locks. Then she called her lawyer. When Justin arrived home that evening, he found divorce papers waiting for him on the porch. And in a small, nondescript apartment, Alfred Farrell, now Nick Buford, watched it all unfold on his bank of monitors, a tumbler of whiskey in hand. He observed the chaos he had orchestrated with a mixture of grim satisfaction and a deep, aching sadness. Cheers, Hope, he murmured, raising his glass to the screen. I hope it was worth it. Hope Farrell stood in the checkout line at the local grocery store, her cart filled with the bare necessities. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for her wallet, knowing what was coming but praying for a miracle nonetheless. I'm sorry, ma'am, the cashier said, a hint of pity in her eyes. Your card's been declined. Hope felt the stares of the people in line behind her, heard their impatient sighs. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as she fumbled for another card, then another, each one useless, canceled by Alfred in his meticulous destruction of their shared life. I'll have to come back, she mumbled, abandoning her cart and fleeing the store. In her car, Hope let out a strangled sob. How had it come to this? Just weeks ago, she'd had it all. A loving husband, a good job, financial security. Now it was all gone, evaporated like morning dew under the harsh light of her betrayal. Her phone buzzed. Justin. Hope considered ignoring it, but desperation won out. They needed to find Alfred, to try and salvage something from this wreckage. Any luck? She asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Justin's bitter laugh crackled through the speaker. Oh yeah, tons of luck. All bad. The PI we hired can't find a trace of Alfred. It's like he's vanished into thin air. Hope's grip tightened on the steering wheel. We have to keep looking. He's got all our money, Justin. I can't even buy groceries. You think I'm doing any better? Justin snapped. The station fired me. My wife's divorcing me. I'm sleeping on my buddy's couch. This is all your fault, you know. My fault. Hope's voice rose incredulously. It takes two to have an affair, Justin. You were just as involved as I was. Yeah, well, it wasn't my husband who went psycho and destroyed our lives, was it? The call ended abruptly, leaving Hope alone with her thoughts. She drove aimlessly, her mind racing. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. There had to be. Her phone rang again. Hope's heart leapt, hoping it was Justin calling back to apologize. Instead, she saw her mother's number on the screen. Mom, she answered hesitantly. Hope Elizabeth Farrell. Her mother's voice was ice cold. Would you care to explain why I just received an anonymous email detailing your indiscretions? Hope's blood ran cold. Mom, I can explain. Save it. Her mother cut her off. Your father and I are beyond disappointed. We raised you better than this. Until you come to your senses and beg Alfred's forgiveness, don't bother calling us. The line went dead. Hope pulled over to the side of the road, her vision blurring with tears. She was alone, truly, utterly alone. Meanwhile, in his rented apartment, Alfred, or rather, Nick Buford, leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. He'd just hit send on the email to Hope's parents, another nail in the coffin of her former life. He turned his attention back to the monitors, watching Hope break down in her car through the traffic cam he'd hacked. Part of him wanted to reach out, to comfort her. But that part was quickly silenced by the memory of her betrayal. You made your bed, Hope, he murmured. Now lie in it. As the weeks turned into months, Hope and Justin's desperate search for Alfred continued to yield nothing. Their relationship, once passionate and exciting, deteriorated into a series of bitter arguments and recriminations. This is useless, Justin shouted during one particularly heated exchange. We're never going to find him. And even if we did, what then? You think he's just going to hand over the money and forgive us? Hope sank onto the worn couch in Justin's friend's apartment, where they'd both been staying. We have to keep trying, she said, her voice hollow. What else can we do? Justin ran a hand through his unkempt hair, his once handsome face haggard with stress. I don't know, Hope. I just don't know anymore. As they sat in defeated silence, neither of them aware of the hidden camera capturing their every move, transmitting it all back to the man they were so desperately seeking. 6 months after Alfred Farrell's disappearance, a new novel hit the shelves. The Postman Always Knows Twice by M.B. Fowler became an overnight sensation. Critics hailed it as a gripping tale of betrayal and revenge. Readers couldn't put it down, and talk shows clamored to interview the mysterious author. Hope Farrell stood in the local bookstore, staring at the display of novels with a mixture of disbelief and horror. The cover showed a stylized image of a man in a postal uniform, his back turned, walking away from a woman reaching out to him. It was too close to home, too familiar. With shaking hands, she picked up a copy and began to read. Page after page, her own story unfolded before her eyes. The names were changed, certain details altered, but there was no mistaking it. This was her life, her affair, her downfall, laid bare for the world to see. It can't be, she whispered, drawing curious glances from other shoppers. It can't be him. But deep down, she knew. Alfred, quiet, unassuming Alfred, had outplayed them all. Across town, Justin Hendricks was having a similar revelation. He'd been channel surfing in his dingy studio apartment when he saw a familiar face on the screen. It was Alfred, looking more confident and put together than Justin had ever seen him. So, Mr. Fowler, the talk show host was saying, your novel has struck a chord with readers everywhere. What inspired you to write it? Alfred, or M.B. Fowler, as he was now known, smiled enigmatically. Well, Barbara, I think we've all experienced betrayal in some form or another. I wanted to explore what happens when someone decides not to just lie down and take it, but to fight back. Justin fumbled for his phone, dialing Hope's number with trembling fingers. Are you seeing this? He hissed when she answered. It's Alfred. He's written a book about us. I know, Hope replied, her voice hollow. I'm holding a copy right now. As Alfred's book tour continued, his star only rose higher. He appeared on more talk shows, gave interviews to major newspapers, even hinted at a possible movie deal. With each appearance, he gained more sympathy as the wrong spouse who had turned his pain into art. Meanwhile, Hope and Justin watched their lives crumble further. They consulted lawyers about suing for defamation, but without hard evidence that the novel was about them, and with Alfred's meticulous changes to protect himself legally, they were advised it would be a losing battle. He's ruined us, Hope said dully, staring at the cease and desist letter their lawyer had received in response to their inquiries. Completely and utterly ruined us. Justin, who had been pacing the small office, suddenly whirled on her. No, Hope, you ruined us. You and your inability to keep your damn mouth shut about our affair. If you hadn't bragged to your friends, if you hadn't been so careless, none of this would have happened. As they descended into yet another argument, neither noticed the small camera hidden in the potted plant in the corner of the lawyer's office, transmitting their distress to a man miles away. Alfred, now comfortably settled in a luxurious apartment paid for by his book success, watched the feed with a mix of satisfaction and unexpected melancholy. He had won. He had his revenge. So, why didn't he feel as triumphant as he'd expected? Shaking off the moment of doubt, Alfred turned his attention to his laptop. He had charitable donations to make, anonymously, of course. Let the town see how their once-beloved radio personality and his mistress had fallen, while a mysterious benefactor supported local causes. It was the perfect final touch to his plan, the ultimate victory. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered her verdict. Hope sat rigid in her chair, her once stylish clothes now worn and shabby. Across the aisle, Alfred, looking every inch the successful author in a tailored suit, listened impassively. In the matter of Farrell versus Farrell, the judge began, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Alfred Farrell. Given the evidence presented of Mrs. Farrell's infidelity and Mr. Farrell's significant contributions to the marriage, the division of assets will be as follows. Hope barely heard the rest. It was over. Alfred had won, again. The careful documentation of her affair, the financial records showing how he'd supported her through graduate school, the character witnesses attesting to his upstanding nature and her recent erratic behavior. It had all added up to this moment. As the court adjourned, Hope watched Alfred stride confidently out of the room. He didn't even glance in her direction. She was nothing to him now. Less than nothing. Weeks later, Hope sat at her small kitchen table, pen hovering over a blank sheet of paper. She'd lost everything. Her job, her reputation, her family's support. Alfred's book was still topping the bestseller list, a constant reminder of her shame. In desperation, she decided to make one last appeal. Dear Alfred, she wrote, her handwriting shaky. I know I have no right to contact you, no right to ask for anything, but I'm begging you, please. Can we talk? I know what I did was unforgivable, but I never meant to hurt you. I never stopped loving you. Please, Alfred, I have nothing left. No one left. You're my only hope. She sealed the letter with tears in her eyes, clinging to a shred of hope that somewhere, deep down, Alfred still cared. 3 days later, a large manila envelope arrived at Hope's apartment. Her heart leapt. Had Alfred read her letter? Was this a response? But as she tore it open, her hope turned to ashes. Inside was a formal cease and desist order, threatening legal action if she attempted to contact Alfred again. It was signed by his lawyer, not even by Alfred himself. Hope sank to the floor, the papers scattered around her. It was truly, finally over. Across town, Justin Hendricks packed the last of his meager belongings into a battered suitcase. The town that had once adored him now shunned him at every turn. No one would hire him, not even for the most menial jobs. Every stranger's glance felt accusing. Every whispered conversation seemed to be about him. He couldn't take it anymore. With no destination in mind, Justin tossed his suitcase into his car, the one possession he'd managed to keep, and drove away from the town that had been his home for so long. He didn't look back. Meanwhile, Alfred Farrell stood in the local animal shelter, surrounded by the barks and meows of abandoned pets. He'd started volunteering here a few weeks ago, finding an unexpected solace in caring for these forgotten creatures. As he walked down the row of kennels, a pair of soulful brown eyes caught his attention. A mixed-breed dog, probably part lab, part who knows what, watched him cautiously. The sign on the kennel read Max, 3 years old, abandoned. Something in the dog's wary gaze struck a chord in Alfred. Here was another being who had been betrayed, left behind by those who should have cared for him. "Hey there, Max," Alfred said softly, crouching down. "How about we start over together?" Max's tail gave a tentative wag, and as Alfred filled out the adoption papers, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. A flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn to trust again, to love again. It wouldn't be easy. The pain of Hope's betrayal still lingered, a dull ache in his chest. But as he clipped a leash onto Max's collar and led him out of the shelter, Alfred felt the first stirrings of a new chapter beginning. "Come on, boy," he said, scratching Max behind the ears. "Let's go home." As they walked out into the sunlight, Alfred Farrell, author, divorced, and now dog owner, took his first step towards a future unburdened by the weight of betrayal and revenge. Max trotted alongside him, his paws padding softly on the sidewalk. For a moment, Alfred allowed himself to imagine a life filled with simple pleasures, long walks in the park, quiet evenings by the fireplace, the unconditional love of a loyal companion. But as they reached Alfred's car, a flicker of movement across the street caught his eye. There, half hidden behind a parked van, stood Hope. Her once perfect hair was limp and unkempt, her designer clothes replaced by a shabby sweater and jeans. Their eyes met for a brief, electric moment. Alfred felt a surge of conflicting emotions, anger, pity, a ghost of the love he'd once felt. For a heartbeat, he considered crossing the street, speaking to her, offering what? Forgiveness? A second chance? Max whined softly, drawing Alfred's attention back to the present. He looked down at the dog, then back up at Hope. She took a hesitant step forward, hope blooming in her eyes. Alfred shook his head once, firmly. Then he opened the car door, helped Max inside, and drove away without looking back. As the shelter receded in his rearview mirror, Alfred felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The chapter of his life that included Hope was over. He had exacted his revenge, written his story, and now it was time to move on. He glanced at Max, who was watching the world go by with eager curiosity. "Well, boy," Alfred said, reaching over to scratch behind the dog's ears. "Looks like it's just you and me now. Ready for a new adventure." Max's tail thumped against the seat in response. As they drove home, Alfred's mind wandered to his next book project. Perhaps a lighter tale this time, something about new beginnings and second chances. He had a feeling he'd have plenty of inspiration. The sun was setting as Alfred pulled into his driveway, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn of his new home. A modest but comfortable house bought with the proceeds from his bestseller. As he and Max walked up the path, Alfred felt a sense of peace settle over him. Inside, he unclipped Max's leash and watched as the dog cautiously explored his new surroundings. Alfred moved through the house, turning on lights and shedding the persona of M.B. Fowler, successful author, like an old coat. In his study, he paused before the wall of framed clippings, reviews of his book, photos from his talk show appearances, the New York Times bestseller list with his name at the top, mementos of his triumph, his revenge. For a moment, he considered taking them down. But no, they were part of his story now, a reminder of how far he'd come and what he'd overcome. Max padded into the room, pressing against Alfred's leg. Alfred looked down at the dog, then back at the wall of memories. "You know what, Max?" he said softly. "I think we both deserve a fresh start." He reached out and straightened one of the frames, a small smile playing on his lips. The past couldn't be erased, but it didn't have to define his future. As the night deepened, Alfred settled into his favorite armchair, a notebook open on his lap. Max curled up at his feet, a warm, comforting presence. The house was quiet save for the scratch of pen on paper and the occasional contented sigh from the dog. Alfred wrote late into the night, pouring out ideas for his new novel. But this time, instead of a tale of betrayal and revenge, he found himself writing about redemption, about the healing power of unexpected connections. As he finally set down his pen and prepared for bed, Alfred realized he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: excitement for the future. He had survived the storm of betrayal, navigated the turbulent waters of revenge, and now found himself on the shores of a new beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities. But for now, as he drifted off to sleep with Max, snoring softly beside the bed, Alfred Farrell was content. The story of the betrayed postal worker was over. The story of Alfred Farrell, author and dog owner, was just beginning. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.